Hello YouTubers, and welcome to my video discussing this guitar, a JMG Century, serial number 526. This is the first in a series of videos that I'll be discussing some Australian built guitars, mostly archtops and jazz guitars that I am currently the custodian of. And this is the oldest guitar in my collection, I think. A couple of the old guitars I'm not really sure on the build dates exactly because there's no records kept, but I'm pretty sure this is the oldest one. So JMG stands for Jack Maskell Guitars. Jack Maskell served for the Australian Defence Force during World War II, and when he returned from, he was a prisoner of war in Changi in Singapore, held prisoner by the Japanese. And when he returned from the war, he settled in Perth and started a company building guitars. And his company had a grant, some sort of grant through the government, sort of post-war rehabilitation scheme to employ other ex-servicemen and prisoners of war. So there's a couple of different records of his membership in the Defence Forces there. An interesting thing to note is the two different service numbers, but other than that, the most of the information is the same. So this is a bit of an excerpt from a newspaper article in 1950 discussing the company that Jack Maskell formed, building his guitars. I won't read the whole thing for you. If you want to read it, just pause and or take a screenshot and read it at your will. Interesting things to point out there is that they made over 700 guitars. They were selling them, as he says, got a bit cheeky. They were selling them back to Singapore. And they certainly sold them overseas in the US and in England. And the last point there, Maskell lost a leg in Changi. That's an interesting thing to note. This particular ukulele is on display at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. Note there are two different spellings of the word ukulele. I'm not sure who built this, but it could well have been built by Maskell. It says that it was built by an unknown prisoner of war in Burma. Now we know that in Changi, prisoners of war were shipped to Changi from other prison camps. So it could have been, but it's not 100% sure. But anyway, it's another ukulele built by a prisoner of war. Here's a couple of adverts for JMG. On the left is an advert for JMG guitars. As you can see, dated 1950. On the right is actually a drawing from the patent that JMG applied for and achieved, actually. They applied for it in 1946 and were granted the patent in 1948 on a particular construction method for ukuleles. So here's the label from my guitar. As you can see, the model is Century. I assume it's named after the Gibson Century. And the serial number 526, I'm not 100% sure whether they sequentially numbered all of their instruments. So this is the 526th number instrument built, or whether the ukuleles and guitars had different runs of serial numbers, or even if they started at number 1. Who knows? For those of you that are interested in specs and things, here's a list of the guitar's details. It does have quite a long scale length for a small bodied guitar, and it has quite a chunky neck. It's quite thick at the nut, but it just gets thicker and thicker as you go towards the 12th fret. And it's a very flat fretboard. So here's the headstock of my particular guitar. That's the JMG logo. You can see there's a fair bit of lacquer checking going on. However, my guitar does retain the original tuning heads, and you can see in the picture on the right there the three-piece construction for the neck with I've no idea what the timber actually is, but you can see the wood, the grain of the timber running the two different directions to create quite a stable neck. My guitar does feature some of its other original hardware, including the JMG engraved tailpiece there and the original pickguard. It didn't, however, come to me with a bridge, so I've just made a temporary bridge to hold the strings in place to make the guitar playable. As I said, I don't know what woods it's made from, but it does have some interesting figure. There's a couple of close-ups there of some of the figure on the back of the guitar. The wood for the fretboard, I've no idea what it is. It's not particularly nice and it's quite heavily stained. The frets themselves seem to be some sort of nickel steel kind of fret, unlike typical brass frets of a lot of guitars of that era. And the inlays are just white plastic dots. The guitar came to me in a pretty poor state. The neck was loose and, well, actually the neck was off. And the guitar had no binding fitted, so I had to do a fair bit of repair to the guitar to get it to a point that it was playable. Now, I'm sure you didn't come here to hear me talk about the guitar. You'd like to hear it and hear what it sounds like when it's played. So I'll play it for you. Being a Century model guitar, as I said, I assume it was named after the Gibson Century, which is a guitar that's perhaps best known, most famous for being played by the blues guitarist Robert Johnson. So I'll play a couple of blueses for you. I'll play a fingerstyle blues first, and then I'll play one with a plectrum, and you can hear the difference in how the guitar responds to those different styles of playing. Overall, I think the guitar's got quite a lot of sort of mid-range honky-tonk kind of tone to it. So there you go, that's the JMG Century. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.